welcome to all of you, and thank you for tuning in on Rwanda Television. My name is Novella Nikwigize. We are here to discuss on that topic with Nii Armah Sowah, who is a Ghanaian arts educator. He's a therapist at the University of Colorado. He's a Pan-Africanist, and he is, let's say, a spokesperson of arts in Africa and throughout the world. Thank you for coming, Mr. Nii Armah Sowah. So you are here in Rwanda, and it's not the first time. How do you see, what is the state of art here in the country?
I am just here to visit and meet people and to learn a little about Rwandan culture and the people. I wouldn't say I know much about Rwandan arts, but from what I've seen, especially in the area of dance, there is really tremendous beauty in the traditional dances of Rwanda and the musics that go with it. And I'm pretty impressed with that. I believe that's about as much as I can say about the arts in Rwanda without, you know.
Yes. Now, you are, let's say, a Pan-Africanist. You are an arts educator. You teach dance, but you are also a motivational speaker. How does it all come together? What is the motto?
Basically, I was born very shy, and I believed I had something to offer the world. But because I was so shy, I was limited in what I could share in terms of manifesting my highest potential. Now, I always loved to dance. I've always loved music and singing and all that. So when I decided to go to the University of Ghana to study dance, I did it with this belief that the dance was going to liberate me, because dance was more than entertainment. Dance was more than cultural expression. Dance is emotional. Dance is physical. Dance is spiritual. So I studied dance as a way of liberating myself, but also learning about my culture.
But you studied dance over 30 years ago, and that it wasn't the main, let's say, area in which African parents would see their children in. How was it for you to tell your parents, I want to study arts?
That's a good question. When I decided to major in dance, my family was devastated because I come from a very conventional or traditional family, Christian family that did not regard dance as something for children who are well brought up, or, you know, they didn't feel dance was worthy. But I always had this belief that there was more to dance. The psychology, the, you know, culture, the values are all embedded in dance. So I insisted on pursuing dance, but luckily for me, I had a more rounded interest in the arts. I was an actor, I was a singer, I was a drummer, I was a dancer, and so I was able to bring it all together. And anyone who knows anything about dance in African context knows that there's never dance without music, there's never dance without storytelling, there's never dance without dramatic expression. And all those have power to build communities, to heal individuals, and to build individuals' self-confidence. And so I insisted on studying it, and yeah.
Exactly, and you are also the director of 1000 Voices project, and your motto, if I can say it, is whenever we raise our voices collectively, change is inevitable. How does it apply to our African citizen today?
I think that it is important as a people to know who we are, to know our roots, because as Africans, we are not a mistake. Our environment is not a mistake. Our skin color is not a mistake. Our hair is not, we are no mistakes. And for anyone who is in love with their nature, who they are, they bloom, they grow. You get more beautiful when you are in love in your own skin. And for me, development means building on who you are. I am a contemporary version of my grandfather. Anybody who knows my grandfather sees me, they're like, wow, this is Papa. Because I carry the DNA of my grandfather. I have no choice. Now, as a people, our development, our success, our peace depends on believing in who we are and building on who we are.
Exactly. And as you talk about your grandfather, I'm sure he's from those areas, I mean, those times when we were, liberation meant to liberate from the colon. Basically, it was at that time of colonialism. Now, today, there's no colonization. But of course, African people, and it comes a lot in Pan-Africanist, let's say, discussions. African people, we still need to liberate ourselves from something. What is it?
I think colonialism left us with something. It is internal. As a human being, we are born to be creative. We are made in the image of God to be able to manifest great things. Anytime anybody is robbed of this power, the person is doomed. We got independence from colonialism, but unfortunately, in our bid to build our nations, build ourselves, we have ended up doing what I call copy and paste. Copy and paste. When we look at our structures, let's say our political structures, judicial structures, educational structures, when we look at our institutions of marriage, all, even fashion, architecture, you realize that we have what we call traditional and contemporary. It turns out, for the most part, what we call contemporary is borrowed.
Exactly.
Our tradition is stalled. It has not been developed. So I say that several hundred years ago, Europeans were wearing boots. They were wearing suits. They are still wearing suits based on the ones they wore 1,000 years ago. But unfortunately for us, when we say contemporary, sometimes it does not reflect our past. It does not reflect, for example, architecture. We live in an area of the world where we have to deal with a lot of heat. We live with mosquitoes. We live with sweat. One would think that our architecture will respond to our environment. In other words, our architecture will keep our houses cool. Our architecture will draw from our environment. Our architecture will draw from our aesthetics. I just went to Nyanza to see the King's Palace, and I was blown away. The potential for creating contemporary design is infinite as far as African cultures go.
Exactly.
But the question is this: what is standing in our way in terms of cultivating our nature, our hair, our skin, our foods, our medicines, our fashion? Sometimes it's difficult for us to be honest with ourselves, to say, how come it is so hot here, yet I'm wearing this? Why am I wearing this? It's very difficult for us to be honest with ourselves.
Exactly.
But everybody else sees us and wonder, why are these people dressed like that? Why are these people eating this? They don't produce any of this. Exactly. Now, anytime what you love, what you crave, what you value is produced by someone else, you are just market.
Exactly. But I think in these last years, we have a rebirth of Africa as not just a trend, but something, I mean, a concept that needs to be there and that needs to be thought of. For example, fashion. I think there is a rebirth of the African fashion and the kitenge that is coming back, and we want to leverage the kind of cloth and clothing that we've been having. Same thing with most of the discussions. For example, here we have this program on agachiro. And agachiro is giving value to ourselves and also to homegrown solutions. We have those things. So do you think that there is a change that is emerging?
That is why I'm here. I have seen so much possibility, so much hope, so much ignition in Rwanda, and I'm excited to participate in it. I mean, from the systems that was used to resolve the post-genocide issues and Umuganda, and so many things that are happening here are all that I've been talking about. And I feel that anytime you wake up and you hear something, you see something, you smell something every day, that becomes part of your consciousness. And so what I believe is that our youth, our societies need to hear more. And more than anything, the models of respect, the people who are looked up to, the people who are respected, the people who are seen as successful or leaders, ought to set the direction, the trajectory, so that our people will be coming together to head in a certain direction. But when the talk about Pan-Africanism is from the fringes or activists, while you realize that anybody who is important, anybody who is respected, is not demonstrating those things.
Exactly.
It becomes a little confusing for the youth. Yeah.
And you're talking about youth. I think one of the debate today is how do we engage youth in the development that we're seeing on the continent or in the world in general, because most of the time youth represent much more a recipient of everything that is done and not really actors. You have, let's say, the chance to be in one of the area that young people love, dancing, singing, acting. How do we leverage that interest into making sure that the youth is playing a part into the development that we want to see on the continent?
I would like to say quickly that I am not an expert, and I will not claim to have answers for all the questions or the issues, but I believe that every day we change. Every day we are transformed. We are transformed in terms of our values, our aesthetics, what we consider beautiful, by what we see, what we listen to, what is in the air we breathe. So anytime I see a young person with earphones, anytime I see a young person on watching television, I say this: what is the content of that diet? And how is that diet shaping the mind? Exactly. So you talk about the arts, dance, music, books, stories. I have a belief that whatever we value, whatever we believe in terms of what we wear, what we think is trendy, are taught to us by artists, either through commercials, through movies, through celebrities. The question is that if our house is on fire, if we are in the midst of calamity, how do we bring all our resources to help solve the problem? And in that case, if artists have the power to shape what people believe and what people love, how can we cultivate artists consciously to be what we call conscious artists?
Exactly.
Yes.
But now the problem is our African artists, I wouldn't want to give a share, let's say a number, but most of them are actually copying modern or contemporary or European, US artists that are out there. They clothe the same way, they are going to do the same kind of music, the same kind of dancing. So, and there are those ones that our young people look at as models because they say they are African and they are as artists, and that's what African art is about. What do you have to say to that?
I like to say this. I don't mind learning from other cultures. But when you get to a point where you can actually ignore your organic food, where you can ignore your beautiful melanin skin, you want to condemn it for another person's. I would be fine if what you are copying is superior. But to get to a point where you're actually trading your cow for chicken, it is questionable. What kind of person would trade a cow for a chicken?
But how can we make sure that we are changing the narrative? What are the opportunities that are there to be, let's say, to be leveraged so that we change the narrative of where we're going as a continent?
I have been doing a lecture called the African Artist as an Agent for Shaping the Future. And I speak with artists, I speak with producers, I speak with writers, and helping them understand the situation Africa is in. The fact that we are struggling economically, we are struggling culturally, we are struggling with our own identity, and the fact that education, formal education, does not do all the teaching, that artists are part of the teaching. So as an artist, ask yourself, what am I serving? What am I doing? And what difference does it make? I believe that we may do ourselves well to organize seminars and training programs for artists. I believe every country ought to have a very strong performing arts institution where people are trained, not in terms of telling them what to do, but opening their minds to understand the impact, the power they wield on society, so that they will be authentic artists coming from a place of strength, not of trying to be like someone else.
And I think it's very important that you say that you are an artist, but also you have gone to the US very early, just after your studies in Ghana. That was back in '87.
I finished my studies in '87.
Yes.
I taught in the University of Ghana till '94 before I went to the US.
So you went to the US in '94.
Yeah.
And the issue that we have is that we are losing talents. A lot of African artists, young people, even more mature people, so to speak, are going to the US, to Europe, and to developed countries. And they actually are shaped there into the nationals of those countries, which can be good to adapt. However, you have stayed there and still kept that mindset of developing your continent. What triggered your interest into coming back and not doing like anyone else after all?
I believe that cross-cultural interaction is very a positive thing, but it can be damaging when it's not done on equal footing. When you are interacting with someone from a position of weakness, you tend to lose yourself. So what I say is this: when you have a 6-foot tree, it may have a 1-foot root. But as a tree goes taller, its roots ought to go deeper to support it in terms of grounding it. Now, going outside of Africa can be a good thing, but I personally believe that we need to ground our people. We need to have a national agenda of restoring the African sense of pride. So that when the African goes out, he's not going from a place of weakness, but going from a place of strength and love for self. In that position, a person may learn from others without losing himself.
Exactly. And you have presented, you have taught classes in dances, etc., to American and different nationalities. How do you present Africa to them?
Basically, I see dance and the arts as repositories for African values. Dance, music, storytelling, painting are all they reflect our values. For example, our love for community, our respect for elders, our sense of community and the need for supporting people. So when you go to a dance circle, people, all those things reflect a certain sensibility, that of cooperation. So these are very strong principles that underscore African life. Now, I would say that these things are dissolving like the ice on the north. It's melting. The question is this: can we continue going in the same direction we are going? And in 100 years, what will be left of Africa?
Exactly.
I believe if we keep going in the same direction we are going, we may go extinct. But I believe, given what is going on in Rwanda and some other countries, I believe we can turn the ship around. It will be slow, but we have to be intentional. When I teach, I'm teaching about African values, African culture, African beliefs that are healthy, that I do not believe need to go extinct.
And now, as we are wrapping up, maybe a last word on how to shape the narrative. We're approaching Liberation Day. What is something that we need to leverage so that we change the direction in which the continent is going? Something from art, something from, what should we use?
I will use an analogy. When you find a room, you come back from work and you enter your house and your whole house is flooded. You have a few choices. You can go find mop and start mopping the water. It's not a bad thing. But you could also look for where the pipe is broken and turn it off. As a continent, we need to ask ourselves, where did we fall? For example, there's a proverb. It says, when you slip and fall, you should look at where you fall or where you're hurt. But it's also important to look at where you slipped.
Exactly.
Because when you know where you slipped, good chances that you're not going to slip again.
Exactly.
As a continent, we need to engage in conversations, like create think tanks, create educational structures that support the restoring of African dignity, respect for self, love for self, that would make us develop our gifts of costume, our gifts of language, our gift of song, so that we don't have to do hip-hop to feel good about ourselves, because this is the river. Exactly. This is the river of the arts. We don't go from the river to drink from the pond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nii Armah, and thank you to all of you who have followed us. It was Nii Armah Sowah. You can follow his dance classes all over the world, and most importantly, let's keep that into our minds. We need to keep our dignity and continue shaping the future of the continent. Thank you very much, and stay tuned on our programs on Rwanda Television. It's Novella Nikwigize. Goodbye.